Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Foster, and this is Talk of the Town. What we try to do each week is interesting things around town, things that are making Clinton a much better place, and something we should all get excited about. And a couple of weeks ago, I attended a program that was sponsored by the collaborative between the Morgan High School, Goodwin College, and also the manufacturers here in Clinton. It was a really well-attended program. When I came here, I saw a rather interesting thing that I thought would be interesting to do a show on. And so to talk about this interesting thing, it's called an electric car, is with me right now is Larry Chapman. And Larry's the one who's sort of the engineer behind the whole thing, and then we'll talk to a couple of Larry's students. So Larry, how did this whole project come about?
I transferred here about 8 years ago from Old Saybrook, and when I started teaching, I had left Sikorsky after 20 years. Wow. And one of the things I read about was the Electron, and East Haddam was doing that program. So I went up and visited the teacher. As it turned out, he gave me a frame to use for it, a few other things, very, very cheap. And we did a car on the cheap. I mean, it was maybe a few $100s.
Wow.
And the kids raced that the second year, and then we built a new custom-made car every year after that. It was a fun program there, so when I came here, I wanted to do that. But we were transitioning from the old high school to the new high school. And we had COVID, there were a couple of different things like that. But this year, we had a great bunch of kids that could take this over and make it. Wow. And the good thing about our car, I think, over some of the others, is the kids built nearly 100% of the car.
Unbelievable.
So you have to teach them how to weld and other things like that. But it's, to me, it isn't about me. I mean, I have to stop myself from building it and changing things to maybe make it a little bit better or look better. But generally, I defer to the students and what they want. If they're adamant about how they want to do it, and it's not a safety issue, it's a go.
So how many students were actually involved in making of the car?
We had 2 classes, but out of that, probably about half of each class, maybe around 10 students were actively participating on the car. Some here and there, but like Connor was on it pretty much all the time, and a few of the other students. Mm-hmm. And Tarek is our mathematician for the team, and he's our programmer.
All right.
So he was going to create some pretty cool stuff.
Wow.
And he did some of it over there, so we're going to try and incorporate that next year.
Okay. Now you showed, the other night it was interesting because I saw you showing somebody a little model that it started with. Do you have that little model?
Yeah, it's over there.
Okay.
So it's it got broken up.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like we made it out of ABS black plastic.
So this is your prototype that you started with?
Yeah, so we had wheels on here.
Okay.
And everything was printed. Even this curve here,
yep.
We printed real thin stock. We made scale models of the battery and the motor,
yep.
And scale with the wheels. And then we had if you go in any art store, they have those little wooden models that you can pose.
Sure, yeah.
So we measured that and scaled this car for that model. And again, there was a little roll bar here too. But so it was kind of interesting. This was a few years ago.
Oh, this is a few years old?
Yeah, and this is kind of like what we did. So the first team pretty much got the concept and did a little bit of the bottom frame, and that was about it. Like I said, the last 2 years we didn't cover a lot of ground. And then we got the roll bars to put on. And this year they finished up the rest of it. They put the more complicated things like the rear support for the wheel. All of this was designed and built by them. A little bit different than the original plan.
Right.
And again, we really built it robust. So, first car I ever built, the wheel would actually, when they went around a corner, it would tilt.
Really?
Dangerously. I mean, I should say dangerously. It would just stop the car.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're looking at that and going, is that going to last? I hope so, and it did.
Okay.
So we made it a little bit stiffer than the other ones. We have really good brakes on it.
Yep.
So the way we kind of demoed those is you have it throttled up and just hit the brake, and the brake will stop no matter what goes on with the car.
Okay, Larry, maybe you could walk us around and explain exactly how this works.
So the steering was kind of complex for him. I mean, we had it looks simple when you look at it, but when we actually tried to build it, there's a lot of issues that popped up. There is steering geometry they have to do called an Ackerman angle, and that's the angle from this pin where this thing pivots.
Can you get a shot of that, Iris?
Over to the center of the rear wheel, and there's a certain angle you want for that. And for some reason, we messed that up and we had these the wrong way. And the car just wouldn't behave right and steer right. So we just quickly welded these back on. Mm-hmm. These are typical bike brakes. They're just purchased, and this spindle was made by them. this arm welded onto here and onto this roll bar. They use kind of really good materials too. They use this thing called 4130 chromoly steel. It's kind of corrosion resistant, but it's strong. But what's great about it is it's real easy to weld.
Oh, okay. So walk me through this. Part of this is you actually went out and purchased it, and other things the
Yeah.
kids actually made in school.
Right. They
So-
didn't make the wheel.
Yeah, obviously, and then,
In the brake.
okay. But everything else is basically customized by the kid?
Yeah, like
by the students?
This hand, it's pretty crude. And we were hoping to make something a little bit better.
Yep.
In electronic, almost like an F1 formula.
Yes.
And we'll probably end up doing that next year. So this is the brake,
Yep.
and they kind of steer it, and this is what it's called. We call it a throttle. They keep saying giving it gas, but there's no gas.
Okay.
It's powered by 2-car battery. So this, you can, as you move this, you can actually program the motor controller to do whatever you want. So
Wow.
we do a soft start.
Yep.
So even if you fork, it's not going to throw the car back and put kind of undue stress on it.
Yep.
So it kind of gives it 2-second ramp up the speed. And the brake is what's really, I mean, it's
Yeah.
probably the most important thing we have.
So all this was bought, or the kids? the
Those are
students-
brake cables, they
those are-
installed those.
Okay. And,
So-
but the body right here was all done by the
Yep,
students?
they cut that and they fabbed this wheel up. And
Wow.
This was a cartwheel and we modified it. It was a little wider and they had trouble steering it.
Oh, okay.
so-
Let's walk around to the other side.
This is probably the most complicated thing that they did on the car was all these supports. This was all custom made by them. They cut and even this was out of plate stock.
Wow.
And they would cut that, they would scribe it, we'd do a little print of it, scribe that on there, then they would sand it down to match.
Wow.
So it's really manual labor, but that's how you kind of learn how this stuff works.
Sure.
What we would normally have done is, if we had the CNC, we would have made this on our CNC machine.
Wow.
And we could make actually a lot more elaborate things that would go into the tubes.
How long did it take to actually put this together?
It's hard to say because just trying to figure out what they want to do sometimes takes a long time.
So how much of the students that you said what they want to do with it, how much input do you give them and how much input do they actually have in creating the vehicle itself?
They have almost full
full.
autonomy on it. I mean, I'll give them guidance when how about if we do this? And a lot of times they don't like my ideas. They have their ideas and that's great. I mean,
Yes.
That's what makes it kind of interesting. And sometimes I think the first leg we did back here, it didn't work. So we had to cut it off. And you can only do that so many times because once you weld, this kind of weakens this metal. So if you cut
Sure.
that, re-weld. What we would have liked to have done is have this roll bar a little higher.
Yep.
It's slightly lower. So I think next year they want to cut this section off and put like a loop up here and blend
So
it.
is this a work in progress? In other words, each year they improve upon it? Or do you-
Absolutely.
Okay. So this will look a little bit different next year, or would this become your prototype?
They'll finish it up next year,
Yeah.
the first month of school.
Okay.
They drives now, so you could actually compete in about a day's worth of work if you wanted to. Normally, I remember at Old Saybrook, we'd be there the night before for hours. And I'd buy them pizza, we'd be there till 9, 10 o'clock the night before the race, and we always got it running. So you just to get all the little things that you don't need to test drive it.
Right.
But this has to have a seatbelt system. This seat, we would have to cover all of this stuff.
Okay.
Make a housing for here. We weren't really concerned with that because of our bus issues when we couldn't get to the race anyways.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I heard someone had told me there was an Electrothon, and there was going to be, you're going to be driving it up in Lime Rock?
Yeah, that was the goal.
That was the goal?
Yeah,
And
but-
is that something that's gone on every year?
Yeah, not the last 2 years.
Oh, because of COVID, sure.
But they did it this year for the first time, and they're going to have it again in the fall.
Oh, good.
And they're hoping in the fall, there'll be a lot less COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So there was another issue is that once you get up there, they test the students
Oh, they do? And test them from what perspective?
for COVID, just a little.
Oh, they do?
rapid
Okay.
test.
All right, yeah.
And they don't care who takes, you swab, put it, and they put all of them in a row. If there's one positive in that group, you all go home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
And have you seen that happen?
Oh, no, I wasn't there, so I don't.
Okay.
I was worried that was going to happen.
Right.
But then we did some analysis on that, and it was like, I don't know if you can believe the numbers, but it was a pretty reasonable expectation that could happen, where the kids could test the night before
Yep.
and test positive the next day.
Wow.
And it was kind of spreading really quick, but that wasn't really the killer. The killer was trying to get a bus.
Really?
Because,
So had you gotten the bus, you would have gone?
oh yeah, definitely. Marco spent a couple of weeks trying to get a bus, and we had worked with M&J, that's who we're contracted
Right.
to. And it happened. We got one, but it was way too late. Again,
Oh, that's too bad.
when it happened.
So you would have been able to prep this to be able to have been able to participate in that race
Oh,
had you gotten a bus?
easily,
Okay.
easily.
So right now, you could race it if you had a bus? Is that
Yeah, if you
assumption?
gave us a day to do the last little things to make it so it's, because there's different rules when you're racing against other cars. There's a lot of different criteria that you have.
Oh, that's
to
what I
be
was gonna ask
concerned
you,
with.
yeah.
When you're just racing around the building, you don't have to worry about all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like, you don't really need a 5-point. You're not going to crash in anything. But cars do. What you worry about isn't even a crash because these cars are pretty robust. It's if somebody's wheel goes up on your wheel.
Oh, okay.
And there
Yep.
was a car that kind of flipped over. Nobody got hurt.
Yep.
And that's only one time it happened. So because of that, you want to make sure you have seatbelts if you do roll it over. And the student that did it was an old Lime car. There's a video on YouTube.
Really?
If you look at Lime Rock, Electron, Rollover, and you'll see the car. The boy, my son was at Old Lime at the time. He didn't even know he flipped over.
Wow.
That's how quick it happened. And
That's
it went up,
amazing.
you can see the hood kind of flop, but they're so fast and in there, they have helmets, gloves, shoes, pants, jackets and everything that, and the roll bars. And the way you're supposed to test these is you're supposed to put the student in there with the seatbelt, turn it upside down and drop it like about a foot, I think,
Wow.
2 inches, and you just drop it.
Really?
So, I mean, you don't ever want somebody getting hurt.
Of course not, but you want to protect it in case that happens.
So it was, the car rolled over and he says, geez, he goes, what just happened? And he just kept going.
Wow.
He didn't even, you stop for a second and then you see the car start moving. So,
Oh, so he flipped over and then continued on the race?
yeah, he wasn't even sure. He didn't know he rolled over when he come in. Oh,
How could that possibly happen? You roll over, you don't know it.
It happens quick. And he's in a car, their car is all aluminum and totally enclosed.
Yes.
So this is an open cockpit.
Okay.
And the reason we did that is you can be a better driver.
Okay.
So when you're behind a plexiglass, dirty windshield, you can't drive the lines as accurately as you can when your head's up.
Gotcha.
And aerodynamics at 25, 30 miles an hour isn't that critical.
Yeah, that was my question. How fast will this go?
About 30.
30.
I mean, I think this one will go quicker because we have kind of a unusual wheel on the back. That's an automatic transmission.
Oh, interesting.
It's you can't even buy them anymore. I bought them when I was all Sabre. I bought it myself because it was so cool. It was the developer's kit.
Yeah.
So you can put a little drive motor on that, and you could design this to where it goes 25 miles an hour, and you can fix a gear. And then as you go slower, it will gear up or gear down as necessary.
Now, it's interesting, you mentioned, how many schools would actually participate in something like that?
Well, there's usually at least 30.
30. And are they all under the same requirements? I mean, can somebody jack it up a little bit so it might go more than 30 miles an hour? Is there any way,
No.
are there any way that govrins the restriction in the
There's
application?
no restriction on speed, but
Oh.
if you go too fast, you're never going to finish the race.
Now, why is that? Because of the
Because
battery?
you have 2 batteries, and everybody pretty much uses the same batteries.
Okay. Yep.
Because they didn't want it to be a competition of who could buy,
The best.
$5,000 batteries.
Right, right.
So they're 2 Optum batteries, not cheap. They're a couple $100 a piece.
Sure.
But it's more affordable for almost anybody to do it that way.
So that would be the only restriction, would be the battery life?
That's your energy.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And then everything else, your motor, you can do almost whatever you want, but you have 60 minutes to drive it.
Oh, so the whole race is 60 minutes?
That's it. So you
Oh,
want your
okay.
batteries to run out, not that they completely run out.
Right.
But there is a very distinct drop in performance when they start to die.
Okay.
You think it would just go, and you would go slower and slower and slower. It's like the last 5 minutes sometimes, you're, oh, I'm losing it, right? And then once they go out, that's it. You'll see the cars.
Oh,
like,
really?
barely moving.
And so sometimes there would be a situation, there's 30 cars, maybe a couple of them, 2 or 3 not even make it to the finish line for the 60 minutes?
Yeah, it's a lap, so you can do about 50 laps, 50, 60 laps.
Okay.
So, and when you go too slow, they black flag you and you're off the track.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, if everybody's passing you and you're running out, they just tell you that you're off the track.
Wow.
Because it's kind of difficult to pass. And
Okay,
they
yeah.
have rules, and when somebody's behind you, you have to move over for them to let them go.
Oh, okay.
Plus, we're with radio communication.
Oh, yeah?
Actually, cell phones now.
Yeah, sure.
We used to have radios, and so we can tell the driver much easier when to pass.
Okay. Oh, so you're watching the race and say, okay, now's a good time to look to your right, look to your left?
Yeah, we have guys with big posters that
Oh,
tell
do
you
you?
how many laps you've completed, and what we're shooting for is a very specific time, roughly a minute.
Okay.
And so if you're going over that, right, you're going too slow,
Yep.
you need leave juice, if you're going below that. And you can do it electronic. You can do it with amp meters and everything else.
Wow. So you're basically trying to alert them to the fact that, hey, you've gone too fast, so you better slow down a little bit because you're going to run out of battery power.
Right. So the first 2 laps, there's a lot of that, getting that out of their system so they kind of get into the flow. But once they do it, it takes 2 or 3 laps, and then they're kind of hitting their mark every time.
Wow.
But we have somebody recording it and putting it up there every time, and as they drive by, they can see it.
And how long does it take to make that lap?
About a minute.
About a minute?
Yeah.
So you've got to get those posters done pretty quick to hold them up?
Yeah, it's just those little eraser boards. So
Yeah.
you swipe it, and they write the next one up.
That's wild.
And a few years ago, I had a girl, she did wireless, which was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And we bought it was a couple $100 for a little Bluetooth device. And we had our laptops on the side, and you can get off that blue controller, that can spit out all kinds of information.
Oh, really?
Nobody was doing that. We could monitor on the side exactly the battery, where it was, and where you were working. A lot more refined, much more engineering involved.
Sure.
She ended up going to the Coast Guard Academy.
Wow. So this is almost like the black box on an airplane, it records everything?
Yeah, it gives you a ton of data.
Wow.
It records I think the amps come out I think you can change it quite a bit, but it's almost like every second.
Wow, that's great.
So-
Now, who actually drives it?
Students,
Okay. So is a student who starts the race the one who finishes the race?
you can have one student race, but then you're going to get I think it's a 5-minute penalty. I'm not sure exactly what that was, but you're supposed to change.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
And
change
how
drivers
far into the race do you have to change?
Anytime you want.
Oh, you can?
Yeah,
And
so-
can you use more than one driver? Or
Yeah,
oh,
but you
can.
probably won't. I mean, to
Okay.
be competitive, you do 2 drivers.
Okay.
And, I mean, we had a student go up there, we were gonna put our best driver up second, and he's going out and he's like ridiculously slow, and we're all screaming at him, what are you doing? And he goes, going as fast as I can. We thought something was wrong with the car,
Yes.
so we said, all right, pit. And we said, just change drivers then, right?
Yeah.
And then looking at everything as he's changing, he's, nothing wrong with this. Next thing he goes, he's going like super fast.
Wow. So when you make a pit
it's
stop,
scary.
what are you doing? Is there something other than changing the driver when you make that pit stop?
You have to do ballast too, so.
So now explain what ballast is.
So the driver and ballast have to weigh 180 pounds.
Oh, really?
So we could put a 200-pound driver in there, but you'd be at a real big kind of competitive disadvantage at that
Okay,
20.
sure.
So, but you couldn't put an 80-pound person in there, right, and let them drive, because that's what everybody would do. It'd be like a
Yeah,
jockey.
sure, you want the lightest, the fastest, right?
Yeah, so what they do is you put an 80-pound driver, well, you got about 100 pounds of ballast.
Oh, okay.
And
So,
that has
so you have to change the ballast when you change the driver.
Yeah.
So if you went from 180 to a 150, then you have to have 30 pounds.
So we selected drivers very similar in weight,
Okay.
enough to where we can have one weight.
Okay.
And they still have to take it out and put it back in, so you have to have a removable method, which is usually like a PVC pipe you would screw right to the frame and fill it with
nice.
sand.
Nice.
It's not a big deal. That's the little stuff. The hard stuff's all the steering and getting the chain not to fall off, and
Sure.
those flat tires and chains are the biggest killers.
Yes.
And short wires that are shorted out. So when they did the wires, we actually take a lot of pains to do this right. So all our connections are soldered.
Wow.
Fully soldered. They go in here and they put a whole gob of solder in there that fills it up. All our crimps are soldered.
Yep.
So we crimp them and then solder them. And you can see they get a little too much with the torch. So they would go around the vise and they would take like 2 people to kind of do it.
Wow.
But that way, then we do a pull test. We'd actually literally just put that crimp in the vise and we would just tug on the wire.
Wow, that's great. Well, I know you have a couple students here. Were they actually drivers?
Yeah, Connor's one of our main drivers.
Okay, welcome back. We said we talked to some of the students. First of all, your name?
I'm Connor.
Connor, what year are you in, Connor?
I'm a senior.
Senior. And we also have,
Tarek, I'm a senior as well.
now first of all, let's talk to you. How did you get involved in this program?
Originally, I started in Engineering 1, and we mainly focused on CAD, so building things on SolidWorks, and we'd 3D print it and make like little parts.
Yep.
And then I worked up to bigger things in Engineering 2. We worked with a radio, and you would learn about soldering and all the electrical components that go into making a radio. And then eventually I got into Engineering 3, and my first project was like a 15-foot trebuchet.
Now, what's a trebuchet?
It's like think of like a big catapult.
Okay.
They used it in like the 1700s, and they would use it to throw like big rocks.
Oh, okay, I
Because
got you.
they would make a mechanical advantage, so you could make like a small to big gear ratio, and you could throw some pretty big objects using not that much weight.
Yeah.
And so that was my first one. So we we focused on all the engineering components that went into that. It was mainly woodworking. And then this year we went into metalworking. So
how much of this were you actually involved in making of, kind of?
I'd say pretty much all of it. We all hand welded all of these sides right here. Mm-hmm. We riveted the aluminum to the steel, and we had to take into account for all these angles right here. Measuring the angles and welding them precisely. So I'd say mostly all of it.
Now tell me how you steer it.
So we have a rack and pinion gear right here.
Okay.
So there's it's like threads on the inside of here, and we have a screw it'll turn the threads when you turn this, and it'll also turn the wheels as well.
Interesting.
But it's pretty cool because we have a universal joint on here, so we could even steer all the way up here, or down here, depending on how big the person is in the car.
Yeah. So you have driven it.
Yeah, I've driven it a couple times around the school.
It must be pretty cool to drive it, huh?
It's very fun. It's like a go-kart, so it's definitely pretty.
It's like
fun.
a modified go-kart, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So how much of this was actually, as I was asking Mr. Chapman, how much of this was actually manufactured and then put on, and what did you guys actually? How much of this did you guys actually have the input to build?
So these are literally just steel tubes that we got from a distributor.
Okay.
And they came in like 10-foot sections, so we just cut them to what we needed and just welded them on.
That's great.
Same thing with the beams down here. That was just 2x4 sections of steel we bought.
Wow. Now, having done all this and starting with, way back when, the woodworking and whatnot, what are your goals? And what do you want to do? How do you want to take this and apply it in the future?
So we really want to race this at the Electron, which I'm not sure if Mr. Chapman talked to you
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
So, that's really our main goal to, get first place, obviously. But
Sure, of course. Morgan only finishes first, right?
Yeah, so we just want to see like what other schools are doing and how we can improve on this and how we can bring underclassmen in as well and work on this project.
So are you a senior this coming year or right now?
I'm a senior right now.
So you're going to graduate. So you'll still be able to come back and do this with the students? You said your goal is for next year to race in it. Is this for the incoming students or yourself?
It's for incoming students. So we like to show the car off, get new students interested in it, and hopefully have them take the class.
Now, what about yourself and your personal? When you go, are you going to college after this?
Yeah, I'm going to Rensselaer.
Oh, perfect. And you're going to try to apply a lot of these skills, obviously, in Rensselaer.
Yeah.
And what's your goal? What's your career goal? You've got some great training here from Mr. Chapman. Obviously, Rensselaer is an excellent school. So what would be your final goal? What would you like to see when you get out of Rensselaer?
Hopefully to keep working on it. My degree in college is computer science, so I'm mainly focusing on the electrical and technical side of it. But it is good to have the the understanding of how the car actually works.
Sure. But I mean, from a job perspective, what would you like to do?
A software engineer.
Software engineer? Okay. Good. Now, what about yourself, Derek? How did you get involved in the whole process?
So yeah, I've been basically this whole senior year of mine, I've had this program called an independent study, which is basically Mr. Chapman gives me free reign over the whole shop, the computer lab over there, and he says you can learn about whatever you want. So I chose to do electrical engineering and computer science. Mm-hmm. So I've been working with microprocessors. It's basically small computers that you can use to program sensors, lights, displays, touchscreens, basically anything electronic that you can plug into it. So yeah, I've been teaching that all myself through YouTube mainly, but I've seen some applications of what I've been learning in the lab to this electric car. One of the primary things I wanted to do was we have the car batteries in here, but one of the problems we ran into was them overheating, and we wanted to automate that process. So I actually built this microprocessor project that had a temperature sensor on it and a servo motor that would actually, in theory, open up a vent in the front of the car in the nose cone. And so whenever it overheated, let's say 100 degrees, it'll open up the vent and cool off with flowing air that would cool it off as the driver is focusing on driving and
Wow, so
racing.
you developed this on your own?
Yeah.
You're using some help from YouTube and Mr. Chapman?
Yep.
And you actually created it yourself?
Yep.
Well, that's going to give you a good sense of fulfillment.
Oh yeah, it
Wow.
was definitely an accomplishment. I love the coding aspect, but also wiring it all and seeing it actually come to fruition.
So Tarek, this independent study, how many hours did you actually put into the independent study?
Yeah, so every period during the school day, it's at the end of the day, it's around 45 minutes, and then some days in the week I get up to an hour and a half to work on stuff I like. So.
Oh, good for you. And do you work on the weekends as well sometimes?
Yeah, I bring my projects home and I hook it up to my personal computer and I continue working on it because I like it so much. It doesn't feel like I'm doing schoolwork. It feels
Yeah.
like I'm doing what I like to do.
So rather than playing golf or doing something else, you're with the computer.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
sitting on my computer coding away, but yeah, I have some distinct memories of actually choosing coding over like playing something else. So yeah,
Wow,
it's
that's
really
great.
fun.
God, I really admire you because I can hardly turn on a computer, let alone do anything with it. That's why when you ask me some questions about Iris and how she edits this stuff, I have no idea. I couldn't tell Adobe from a tent. So, but with that kind of background, what are you going to be doing next year?
So next year I'm going to go to MIT to major in computer science.
Wow, congratulations. Both of you have gone to
Appreciate
great schools. That's phenomenal. And when you get to MIT, what are you going to major in?
Computer science.
Computer science.
I'm looking at also majoring in electrical engineering, but I'm unsure at the moment just because there's so much to figure out still. So I don't know if I'm going to focus more on hardware or software. So we'll
Wow.
see what the future holds.
And like I asked Connor, what is your ultimate goal? What would you like to do when you get out of college?
My ultimate goal would probably be, like Connor said, a software engineer, but I would also like to work with hardware, maybe for some big companies one day, or later on in my life, maybe even become like a professor and
Wow.
go back into academia. Yeah.
So you like academia as well?
Yeah.
That's great. With a background like you've had, that's going to be a pretty easy thing for you too. And there wouldn't be too many colleges that wouldn't be willing to hire someone like you or Connor. So now that your graduation's coming up soon, right? And what do you guys do during the summer? What do you do during the summer?
We both work at Lobster Landing. And,
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we
Great.
also had this pretty cool internship at Bausch Consumables.
Oh, okay, sure. They were part of the consortium we had the other night.
Yep.
Oh, so you were here for that. That's right. And that was quite a cool thing. And what about yourself? After you do the Lobster Landing thing, anything else you do during the summer?
I also intern with him. We're colleagues at Bausch Consumables.
Oh, good.
We do everything together.
Oh, do you really? Okay, that's great. And that's been a pretty rewarding thing, doing your internship at Bausch?
Oh yeah, we're PLC programmers. So they basically automate medical manufacturing machines, and so we're on the programming side, making sure all the e-stops work correctly, all the robots are functioning how they should be, stuff like that.
Wow. And how much time does that take away from you during the summer?
I work 2 8-hour days there, and then we work at the restaurant as well.
Now you do the same 2 8-hour days?
Yep.
Wow. Well, you guys are real go-getters. I can't believe it. And I wish I had half the brain power you guys have. Wow. Like I said, I can barely turn, even this car, I can hardly turn on my own car. So I really congratulate both of you on what you've done here. And I'm sure Mr. Chapman has been very instrumental in your career and your growth. And I like what he said about the fact that he gives you a little bit of guidance, but it's really up to you guys to decide how it's going to be built. You give input, you talk amongst yourself. And boy, you've created something that it's going to be a legacy for you. You know, you look back, like you said, you want the next generation to be able to drive this at Lime Rock, and you know you'll be making improvements. So, will you guys come back and help the students? You know, after you graduate?
Hopefully, like during the winter break, I hope to come down and see like what they're adding to the car and how it's getting better.
Good, good. Well, listen, I want to thank you both for taking the time from your busy schedule. Boy, and you've got busy schedules. So what do you go do now? Doing some more programs?
Probably, yeah.
Great. Well, you enjoy it, and that's great. Congratulations, and I'm sure you'll both be a huge success. And based upon the schools you're going to, and based upon the legacy that Larry's created for you and what you've done here, I mean, it's definitely you do a lot of congratulations that I do, and I wish you both the best of luck. And 4 years from now, I hope to see where you guys are, and maybe you'll be at some computer science, or maybe you'll be a professor. But I'm sure whatever you do, you're going to be successful. So thank you so much for coming,
Appreciate that.
and have a great summer.
Thank you.
And I'll see
Thank
you at
you.
Lobster Land. You're right around the house, right around the corner from my house.
Sounds good.
Okay. How long have you actually been here?
8 years.
8 years. And you were at Old Saybrook before?
Yeah, about 9 years.
And then you were at Sikorsky?
Yeah.
Oh,
fairly.
great. And what was your role at Sikorsky?
I was started off as a manufacturing engineer, which was more like sheet metal, airframe stuff. And then I moved to materials engineering, and I worked on environmental programs.
Wow.
So we kind of developed new kind of environmentally friendly methods to assemble a helicopter. For instance, we went with zero VOC paints.
Wow.
Before, when they painted the aircraft, you'd have to have, everybody had face masks on, oxygen, and because it was so toxic, there was so many acetone, MEK, all kinds of crazy things in there. And it was just not a pleasant place to be. And then one of my coworkers, he worked with DEF Products, and they came up with a zero VOC paint for one of the first military aircraft in history.
Wow.
And you walk in there when they painted it, was amazing. You could breathe, you didn't need anything on.
Did you have any interrelationships with the Black Hawk project?
Yeah, that's all I worked on.
Oh, okay, so you probably know my neighbor. My neighbor worked at Sikorsky on that project, so we'll talk about that off film. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Larry, for letting us come in
Yeah.
and see this amazing project and what you have here and what you built for these kids. I think it's a real tribute to you.
These guys are amazing to work with.
Well, just talking to them and listening to their backgrounds and what they're doing and where they're going, well,
I wish we could fast forward 10 years and just see what they're doing.
oh, I'm sure whatever they're going to be doing, it's going to be pretty
Yeah,
pretty
that's
darn
what I
good.
mean. I'd like to see it right now, but
Well, good. And I'm sure you'll be following these students as they go through their career.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, you told me the other night when we were during the consortium that you have students that, been out of school for 10 years and they still correspond with you and
Yeah.
get some guidance. And, well, that's awesome. So
Yeah, I might not hear from them for years and years, and I'll bump into them, and shopping somewhere. I mean, at Best Buy, I ran across a couple of my students one time,
Good.
and they came up, Mr. Chapman, I'm like, yeah, I don't know who you guys are. Then when they said their names, it instant, oh my God, that's because it was like 6-7 years.
Wow.
So they look nothing like what I remember them looking like, but
Yeah.
it's so fun when you recognize
Oh, yeah,
them.
absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for doing this. This is great. And I'll be here. We'll be doing Talk of the Town for many years to come, hopefully. And we'll be following the legacy of this. And hopefully you come back, you win at Lime Rock, and you guys can go, yeah, we helped do that.
Well, they're definitely invited for the race next year.
Good.
In spring, because they'll be out of college normally by that time.
Great.
Time of race.
Well, again, thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication, both to the program and also to the community, because this is really something that makes our community look better, and that's what we try to do in this show, is highlight all the good things that are happening in the town of Clinton. So thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is this week's Talk of the Town. My name is Tom Foster. I want to thank you for watching today's show. Also, as I say every time we're on the show, if you have any comments or questions, please let us know. If you have other events you'd like us to see us cover, let us know. You can reach us at iris.dunham@clintonpublic.net. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you follow the career of these kids. Someday we're going to be at Lime Rock racing this, and I hope you'll come out and join us. So thanks again. This is Tom Foster and Iris Dunham, my producer, my director, my editor, and everything you can do behind the camera. And one of these days we'll get her in front of the camera. So again, thank you so much. Have a great day.